welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nitin. I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful, Dan. So, Dan, for our viewers who may not be as familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Dan Comenduley. I am currently working with US Cellular in our insights group, looking at what's going on, the experiences that our customers are having, looking for places where we can build on how we can make the experience better. What are the things that are holding us back? What are some of the things we can do going forward? And looking for different ways to just think more as our customers do about what's going on for them when they use their cell phones. I've worked in a lot of different places as far as being in the insights and research function. I've been at United Airlines, Discover Card, Philip Morris, Pillsbury, a lot of different places, and it's been a very interesting experience to try to think like our customers and also to be where they're going to be in the future.
You know, that's a lot of great responsibility, Dan, and given your rich background, I have no doubts that you continue to excel in that. When your leadership comes to you, Dan, and they say, "Great job," what are they typically counting on you for?
They're looking at insights as to what has worked, what hasn't, but also looking towards what are we going to do about the different things that we have. When I'm been working currently as I am with US Cellular, it's really about not only saying, okay, this is how the experience has been when someone has tried to look something up on their phone or made a call. It's about how much is their reliance on it? How can we make sure that they're having a better experience? And in one of my previous jobs, worked at Synchrony, we did a lot of work there where it was not only looking at the path of how did they make a purchase with one of our customers, but what steps did they do along the way? You know, what were the sites that they went to? When did they do that? And a lot of it leads to what do we need to do as that step when they're in that phase of looking at buying a product. And a lot of the things as far as what has worked and what has been viewed as being valuable has been to build on what we know. It's not just coming up with a new thing that we have found out or that we can look to market to, but it's been really understanding how they got to that step. What is our current knowledge telling us, and how does that fit into the picture so that we can see, yeah, that's right. That's the next step they're going to take, and that's where they're going. And now we know where we need to be when they get to that step.
That's a great experience shared, Dan. Let me double click on, or let's go deeper into that. So when you're helping your teams really figure out the next step, especially when it comes to improving the customer's experience with your products and your services, what are some of the challenges that you see your teams typically face, and how do you help them?
Well, the biggest one is believability. I may have found that nugget that makes the biggest difference, but it also has to kind of be termed in words that they're used to using. So almost the language of the people that I'm talking to, but also it has to build a little bit upon things that they already know. So if you come up with something that is brand new, but doesn't have any roots in what we already know, a lot harder for people to understand. And being able to show the path that gets to that spot, being able to build upon what we already know. It's kind of that thought process. If you think about the journey that's on there, things build on each other. Well, learning is the same way. If I come up and tell you about something that's 20 steps down the road, you're kind of wondering, well, want to know what the next two are to get me to those 20 steps. And if I make that jump all the way to the end, I'm going to lose you. And most people can get to where you want it to be, but if you jump too far ahead, they're not going to believe it. If it's not rooted in some of the things they already understand, or if you're able to show them how it's different than what they already know and how it supersedes previous knowledge, that's where the help is. It really is more of a, I'm going to find you that piece. I got to get you to that piece and get you to understand that part. And if I don't take the time to understand how you think about things now, I don't take the time to use the terms that you do, the acronyms that you use, I'm not going to get there.
You know, that right there is a pro tip, Dan, and I want to highlight what you just said, especially for our viewers, some of them who may be starting out in their insights careers. What you're really talking about is understanding what impact is for stakeholders. What is personally at stake for them? What is at stake for them in that project? What you're really talking about is better understanding the what and the why on a project. And I think that is so powerful, Dan, as uh, a lot of times as researchers, and I'm guilty of this as well, we are problem solvers. And anytime when either a client comes to us or a stakeholder comes to us with a business challenge, then a lot of times my experience has been that I see insights experts just jumping in, trying to solve that problem, trying to figure out the best how, how will we do this? What tool will we use? And I really like what you said about really building a stronger connection and understanding what's important to stakeholders. Because if you don't have a better sense or a good sense of the what and the why, you can't really help them. And no matter how sophisticated your how you'll solve the problem is.
Yeah, and a lot of things that, as far as how I think about it, is it's nice if I know what the answer is, but it's better if the people I'm working with understand how we got to that answer and what they can do with that answer. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with at different points in my career that have gotten caught up in the terminology of research, when really the biggest thing to help people get through reports, understand what you're doing, is to help them by using their language. I could talk about statistical significance all day. That's great, but if I tell you that this is more important than that, that has more impact. There's language is a big part of it, but you got to know your basics as well. And just because I know how to do things statistically and things like that, I can build on more of that story to get to a higher type of technique or think of a different technique than what we've used. Because my biggest thing also is about trying to do the research in the moment that people are in. I can ask you about your experience from 6 months ago. Well, there's a whole bunch of other things that have happened in the last 6 months that could impact how you remember that. If I'm there with you with like an ethnography or some type of survey that is close to when those things happened, or if I can recreate the situation, those are going to be more impactful because the environment is part of that experience that they're going through. It's also part of what impacts what they're going to do going forward.
Now you're getting into the fun stuff, Dan, so I don't want to hold you back. Let's dive into this. Can you share with our viewers any examples of when you dove into understanding the customer's journey and what really matters to them? Can you please also talk about what all you did and then what was the net or end impact of that work with your stakeholders or on your organization?
Well, when I was at United Airlines, we did what was more of an ethnography than it was a full journey. But what we did is we did it in steps. So we hired a firm to do what I'll call the prep for the trip. We had someone who was with the person when they were making their purchase. Uh, we talked also to a couple of corporate travel agents to help us with understanding what they see when they're doing things. We had a couple customers that we joined them as they were packing to go on their trip. And then I also conducted interviews with people during the flight to understand how they got themselves settled in the seat, what they expect. And it was an international trip. So when they are looking for time to sleep, when they're looking for time to eat, how they kind of prepare that whole thing as far as their experience goes, so that we could see what are kind of, excuse me, the key points where it's make or break for the trip, or it's make or break for making that purchase in the first place. And by understanding each of the different steps, we could see where we were doing well, where we could improve a little bit, but also what are the things that stick out in people's minds. And we were able to do it as far as business trips and leisure trips, because the important points are different depending on what the actual reason for the trip is. And it led to some changes that we made as far as boarding process and a few other things that, based on our scores that we had for satisfaction after the flight, we made improvements that actually mattered.
That's a very rich experience share, Dan, and thank you for sharing that. I'll highlight again on a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are pure gold, and I don't want our viewers driving by quickly. I think the first thing that you talked about in terms of doing this in the moment, we are big proponents of that as well in the type of work that we do, because doing research, especially the way you went about it from an ethnographic standpoint, is really wonderful, because you're able to then capture these key insights in real time, while they're happening. For our viewers, what I also want them to be familiar with is, in the journey vernacular, we look at these key moments as moments of truth. And the example that I like to give our clients is, think of your customer's journey not as just something that's happening in a silo or that's just one big process. Think of it as multiple different, very sophisticated processes or stages that are happening. And the way these stages or these journeys connect to each other are through these moments of truth. They're almost like, Dan, these Lego blocks that we all played with as kids, right? Where the way a Lego block connects to another piece is through a certain point. And that's what these moments of truth are. And anytime, you can do what Dan did in terms of capturing these key moments in real time, the more clearer your understanding of these key moments become. Another point that I want our viewers to be aware of also, Dan, in your commentary was, the reason why these key moments really matter is, and it's not just in the aviation or the airline space that you talked about, we see this across the board in all journeys, whether B2B or B2C. But these key moments, they're also they have the power to change, and they're very transformative. And what I mean by that is, these key moments can either become pain points if you don't pay attention to them, and how will you if you don't know about them in real time? Or they can become peak points. Peak points are which drive the customer experience to the next level. Peak points are things that a brand does where customers really are not just satisfied, but they're delighted. And those are also the key moments that make them keep coming back to continuously do business with you. So, that's the advantage of not just these key moments, but also, Dan, what you talked about in really capturing them in real time. Because if you can do that, and if you can put yourself in the shoes of the customer, then the insights that you get are as projectable, as accurate, and as close to home as you can get.
Absolutely. And for me, what you just said is one of the key reasons why I very closely follow consumer trends. A lot of them may not have anything to do with the business I'm working on at the moment. But the fact is that if you have a mindset of consumers are always changing what's important to them, where they're going, where that next fad is at to some extent, but stronger than fad. If you think in terms of yesterday, this was important, tomorrow, it may not be. That's an important piece too within the journey because customers get complacent with some of the things that they're used to. And what used to be the surprise and delight becomes table stakes at some point. And you've constantly got to be following those different things, those different changing consumer attitudes while you're doing this work and after you're doing this work. Because, in my opinion, the customer journey never ends. It just goes on to the next time that they're in your category.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to add to that, Dan, what I also like to guide clients is, yes, their journey, the customer's journey, the consumer's journey never ends. And also, the key facet to keep in mind is uh, the consumer is not part of your journey as a business. You, as a business, are part of the consumer, the customer's journey. And if you don't address their pain points, if you don't understand their key moments of truth, their journey will continue. They'll just continue on their journey holding your competitors' hands.
Yep, very much so. And one of the things that also is a key thing is that consumers are trying to make their journey the best it can be. They're always trying to tell you the way to do that, but it may not be in the way that you're trying to gather information. So you always have to be keeping up with what is the newest social media. You got to be keeping up with the different ways that they communicate to you what matters to them. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's one of those things, excuse me, you have to be committed to it. You have to be interested in it because they can tell if you're faking it, shall we say. And they know who the real players are and who are the ones that are kind of the we'll take what we can get part of the business.
So true, Dan. Completely agree with you. I know we're almost at the end of our time, but I wanted to ask you one final question. If you had the opportunity to redo a similar project or a journey project again, is there anything that you would do different or you would improve on?
Whenever I finish a project, there's always something I wish I had done different or done better or asked. To me, if you've done the work well, one of the things I learned early in my career is that means that research probably created more questions than it answered. I've always gone about trying to learn as much as I can because I don't know what piece might matter, might not. But at the same time, a lot of the questions that we're getting them faster. They're more detailed. There's a lot more depth to them. By going through and being observant with customers, with letting them lead the journey. I mean, you set up the project, you have your different steps and everything else, but you kind of have to let them let the conversation go to wherever they want it to go, because that's where the true insights are going to be. And setting up one of the things I wish I could set up with a lot of the research now is a session where I talk to people a couple of months later after we've done the research. Because while I'm thinking there's a bunch of stuff I wish I had asked, I also know the consumers got a lot of things they wish they had told me.
Hmm.
And a lot of the things that we can come to as far as future enhancements, as far as additions to what's going on, we've activated the thought process for the consumer. If we can show them what they've told us has made a difference and show it to them, they're going to continue to want to tell us more. And just as I said that the journey doesn't end, the thinking doesn't end for the consumer either. And they're always thinking about, well, wait a minute, they asked me this. I'd rather have been asked that. Or I'd rather, now that I've been in that experience, that was fine, but this would have made it better. And a lot of times it's in areas that I would believe I haven't asked about. And having done online chats with different consumers and having what I'll call wider forums than just focus groups or one-on-ones, where it really has been the consumer leading the journey, we've ended up in places that we got results you could never have gotten from a focus group, you could never have gotten from a survey, because you gave the consumer the time to lead you to where they want to be.
Again, great points, Dan, and thank you for sharing that. I want to also layer this with experiences that we've had, helping clients, especially not just in your space, but also with CPG and retail. And something that I wanted our viewers to know is, one time we were helping a client who is a major CPG brand, and their entire focus was really understanding the journey at the time of purchase. And we kept telling them the same thing, that, look, there is this, this is a cyclical journey. This is not a linear journey. And what you may be the best at selling your stuff inside the store, but the post experience also matters a lot on how they're using and engaging with your brand after purchase. And if you don't take that into account, you'll have a harder uphill battle the next time around they come in and they're trying to make a purchase. So, I think your thinking and your model about looking at purchase journeys in a cyclical way is spot on. And that's why I wanted to layer it with an example of something that is outside of your industry, excuse me, because the same principles apply. And that is also what I would love for our viewers to take from this interview, is that if you can focus on, yes, one study will not answer all your questions. What I like to say is, expect it to elevate your confusion to the next level. But if you can look at it holistically and in a cyclical way, then you will be, excuse me, much more well-rounded with your insights.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is a lot of times as researchers, we're guilty of saying, we've got to get the answer to this question, or the only thing that matters is taking care of this objective. And one of the reasons why social media matters so much is it gives the customer the chance to just say what they want to say. And a lot of times you have to wade through some of the stuff that's out there that may not be useful. But the fact is, to that consumer, what they've said matters. And making customers feel like they're heard, making customers know that you're out there listening to them. A lot of people talk about, if you think about the early days of Facebook and Twitter, that a lot of people would be upset if they didn't hear directly from whatever brand it was that they were talking to, which may have been unrealistic with some of the responses, but showing that you're out there at least reading what was going on at that time mattered. That principle hasn't changed. The way we've gone about it has. But the fact is, it's still the same thing that customers, when they're leading the conversation, are telling you what matters to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, Dan, we at the end of this, I would say, not just interesting, but also very wise commentary. So thank you again so much for your time. I think our viewers will learn a lot from your experience shares, and hopefully they can apply it in their businesses.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Take care, Dan.